Hey guys, and welcome to another tutorial video. Today we are going to be looking at the Hall of Fame Bets Parlay Optimizer. So this is the interface that you first come up upon, and today obviously I would love to make a parlay for the Lakers and Warriors games, but today we're going to be making one for the Miami Heat and New York Knicks games. Now when you select the game itself, there are two different options that come up. You could look at game lines, where you could look at things like money line, total points, team points, and spread, all things that you can put into a parlay in various sports books. And then the second thing that comes up, which is the much more popular option and the one that we're going to be looking at today, which is player props. Now, once you hit on player props, it will come up the hottest players in each statistical category. So for the Heat, we have Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Kyle Lowry. Whereas for the Knicks, we have Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, and Julius Randle. But don't worry, we can select many more players than this. So for today's, we're going to be looking at Jimmy Butler, and we're going to have his line at 25 points. Obviously, he's been super hot in the playoffs, and so you're probably not going to be getting as much value for that line as you would in the regular season. We're going to take a look at Gabe Vincent, 2 assists. Then we're going to have 2 New York Knicks props that are going to come up as well. So we'll have Jalen Brunson, 20 points, and then we're going to have Brunson again, and we're going to have not rebounds, but 6 assists. So here, this is our 4-leg parlay. We've put it into the optimizer, and now we're going to hit calculate results. Now, if we wanted to add, for example, we wanted to add legs from the Lakers and Warriors games, we'd be able to do that too. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to look at this same game parlay. So hit calculate, scroll down, and this is the first page you'll come up on. So at first glance, obviously, each player has their statistical output as well as the implied odds. And so Butler's sitting at plus 115, but obviously we know based on recent performances, that's probably, not the odds that you're going to be getting from the sports books. Vincent's hit in 72% of games, Brunson 72, and Brunson assists 57. And combined, where we've taken these two legs, put and checked the games in which they've hit together, so a combined 37%. Then we've gone over to here, New York, where they've had a combined 43, and together that means 16%. So from the outset, it doesn't look like a very good parlay, especially when I have this pulled up on FanDuel right now, and they're offering plus 190 odds. But once we start to look at recent performances, which we would do up here, so you can look at performances from last and this season, this entire season, which is the first one that comes up. We could look at last 20, and all of a sudden we're starting to see the statistical probabilities going up. We could look at last 10, and all of a sudden 56% of games, implied odds of minus 125, and then last 5, where we're up to 60%. We can see that there's some value in this parlay based on the recent performances. Butler's hitting 100, Vincent's hitting 100, Brunson's hitting 100, and so super important to remember that you can look at different time frames within this as well, and then these other filters which we're going to get to later. But another important one that I think a lot of people miss with the Parlay Optimizer is obviously, yes, you have your combined view where they're giving you your percentages and your implied odds based on the season, but you can also look at head-to-head, and based on looking at head-to-head, we can see that this has some really good value because it's actually hitting 4 of the 5 games that they've played this season. We could obviously go back to last season, but it wouldn't be applicable because Brunson's only been on the Knicks for 1 season. You could kind of get an idea of Butler's performances, but important to just look at this season as well. You scroll down here, and you can see a game log of all those games. Again, we're only looking head-to-head right now, so we've only got the 5 games in which all of these 3 of these players have played together. So it hit in Game 3. It didn't hit in Game 2, but again, that's because Butler didn't play, but it wouldn't have hit anyways because Brunson only had 2 assists. It hit in Game 1, and then we can go down to the regular season games as well using the game logs. If we wanted to, we could take a look at charts too. So this is, again, only head-to-head, but let's just go back to combined, and then you'll be looking at charts through the season. So right now we're looking at Brunson's performances. Obviously, a lot of green here, which is a good sign, which means he's been picking up his scoring as the season's gone on. We can take a look at his assists as well, maybe a little more up and down, a little more steady throughout the season, and then we can go over and look at the Miami legs as well. And I think one of the most coolest and neatest features that the platform has that may be a little bit hidden is leg correlation. So the leg correlation basically gives you an idea of how 2 props perform with each other. So number 1, you have raw correlation, which raw correlation basically explains the magnitude. So if Butler's scoring a lot of points, what's Vincent's assists doing? Are they going down or are they going up? And this plus positive 1.3 correlation would imply that when Butler's scoring the ball a ton, Vince is getting a ton of assists, which we can kind of explain in basketball terms in the sense that if Butler's scoring the ball, there's a higher chance that Vincent's dishing the ball to him, getting him assists. So it's nice to see some positive correlation here. And then hit or miss will usually be the same, but not always true. And so we're getting an idea for leg correlation for the Heat, and then we can go over to the Knicks here, and we see that there actually is no real correlation for Brunson points and Brunson assists. So that means even if Brunson's points are going up, it doesn't necessarily mean his assists are going up or down, which means they're just kind of staying steady. And with hit or miss, we can actually see that there is positive correlation, which is interesting because if his points are going up, maybe that means, if we're explaining it in basketball terms, his points are going up, maybe they're double teaming him, they're more tension on him, so then he's passing the ball later on in the game. So again, it's nice to see that both of these legs, there's a lot of positive correlation as well. And what you really don't want is 2 legs or 3 legs or 4 legs that have negative correlation, and that would imply that those two stats don't combine well together. So I think one thing that we can think about that is like if you have 2 superstars on a team, so let's use, for example, LeBron and AD on the Lakers. If LeBron's scoring a ton, there's a low chance that AD is going to score a ton just because LeBron's got a lot of points. I don't know if that's a given, but that's just an example that I would give where sometimes you have 2 of the same stats. You're looking at points. There's 2 superstars. Only one can score, get the ball a ton. So that's might be a scenario where there's negative correlation. Same with rebounds. There's only so many rebounds you can get. Same with assists. So definitely good to keep an eye out for this feature as well, the correlations. But let's just go back to game logs here, and let's start to apply some of these more unique filters that we mentioned and alluded to earlier in the video. So again, we're looking at the combined. We've got 16% of the season, but as we've seen, we've gone last 10 games. Their performances have picked up a lot more. But let's hypothetically say we only want to look in home and away games. So obviously the Miami Heat are home right now. Let's see how their performances change at home. So it's interesting. Some of these stats actually go up. Butler's stats specifically go up a ton, meaning he's scoring the ball in 50% of home games as well. So he loves playing at home, up to 21% there. But again, not a huge difference. Like, home and away, I think there's definitely some change, especially when players are playing at home. But it's unlikely that there's ever going to be a big change when applying these 2 filters. One team that I can think of, for example, the Warriors. The Warriors are much better at home this season than they have been on the road. So that might be one team where these filters definitely come in handy. So again, when you're looking at the combined view, it will apply both filters as well. So now let's take a look specifically at the playoffs. So this is where I think this is most interesting because obviously as we scroll down to the game log, they've played a decent amount of playoff games, both teams, and it's super interesting to see that actually Butler has hit 25 points in every single playoff game, and Gabe Vincent's hit 2+ assists in every single playoff game as well. So the Miami Heat, if we go over here and look at their specific 2 legs, you can see that they're 100% in the playoffs, whereas if we go over the Knicks, we can see they're 5 of 8, and that's specifically, again, just because we're looking at Jalen Brunson. He's hitting 5 of 8 games in the playoffs as well, so we can kind of scroll down, see where it's gone right. So it looks like it's pretty interesting, but he's had 6+ assists. He was on a streak here against Cleveland. The last game against Miami, he scored 30 points, which maybe would imply he was passing the ball a little less. And then here he had exactly 20 points and actually 8 assists as well. So, the game log allows you to really zoom in and kind of see, where the stats went wrong, how much were they missing by. Obviously, let's say if these were all 5s, the games where he missed, it would imply that he's at least getting close. Whereas if the games he was missed, he was only getting, for example, 2 here, and let's say he got 2 here, 2 here, it would imply that maybe, he's either a hit or miss player as well. So again, good to always look at game logs. And so with the playoff filter, we go back to the combined view, minus 165 applied odds. And just a reminder, FanDuel's offering plus 190. It would imply that there's some value there. The next filters we can go with are with players and without players. So obviously we know the Miami Heat are missing a ton of players right now. So, when I say a ton, maybe a few key players in, Tyler Hero and Victor Oladipo. So let's look at how they do without those 2 players. So Victor Oladipo, we go over the Miami Heat legs, and we can see Gabe Vincent has actually done 92% of games, 11 of 12 games. He's had 2+ assists when those 2 players have been out. But Butler's stats kind of remain pretty even. And again, maybe if we select playoffs, and again, you can always select multiple filters here, it would imply, oh, this is good. So Butler scored 25 points and Vincent's hit 100. As we know, they've hit 100% in the playoffs, but this would give games in the playoffs without those two players as well. So neat that you can always put the two filters together, and we can see that, at least with Vincent, his stats really go up when these two players are out, which would make sense. His minutes are going up, more chance to play, more chance to get assists as well. We go over to the New York leg. Obviously, we remember Randall was out with a little bit, so we could look at games. How has Brunson performed in games when Randall has played? And as we can see for the season, his stats actually have gone down just a small percent, so not that big. But let's see in the playoffs. Yeah, so with Randall, again, not too big of a difference there as well. But a good example of how to use the with or without player filter to kind of do your parlay research as well. And then the last set of filters that you can apply are all based on rank. So when you look at opposition rank, that's based all on a team's record. So obviously we go here, we're looking at the two New York legs, and this would be based off, so the Miami Heat, they're not one of the better teams. They're not one of the top 25 percentage of teams in the NBA, but they're in that second quartile here. So, the Heat would be here. This would be kind of measuring how Brunson has performed in games against teams of that rank. Obviously, we can go back to the combined view, and it would select for both. And then the most important ones that I think are really valuable are looking at defensive rank and offensive rank. So if you have some more defensive filters, let's say you're building a parlay of steals and blocks, this would be good to look at how they've performed against better offensive teams. And then defensive ranks is when you're looking at scoring props or assisting props. That's kind of how you would analyze defensive. So again, not too much difference here, and it's harder as well when you're in the playoffs when most teams are kind of towards the top, the more better teams in the league. But this is an especially important filter for the regular seasons when you're looking at teams like, for example, the Rockets, who are pretty poor defensively, allow a lot of threes, which is this filter down here. So you could kind of see how players perform against teams who are some of the worst in the league in terms of defensive ranking, 3-point allowed as well. So you can always apply these filters. You can apply these filters together. Let's say we wanted to see, how has Butler performed in home games? Let's go over the Miami Heat home games against teams, who, for example, I selected a few filters there, who are, in this quartile defensively. And actually, you could see here it looks pretty good, 7 of 10. So maybe there's an argument we could, even extend this further. We could look at the top half teams, and then, let's say we're talking about the Houstons, and I don't mean to pick on Houston a ton here, but let's say we're picking on Houston. How has Butler performed against teams at home, against the worst teams in the league? We can take away the home filter and just look at that. So again, his performances are pretty good, just not together. But again, that's a good use of how to look at the opposition rank filters. So I think with everything, the most important things to always be looking at are the combined view. How are players, what's the correlation? Again, we can look at leg correlation, but how are players playing together? How does one player's performances impact another player? And that's really important when you're considering parlays. And then the last one would be also to look at head-to-head. And obviously here, they've got some good history, both the Heat and New York, and these specific players have performed well in head-to-head games. So that's just a quick overview of how to use the Parlay Optimizer to research your parlay research. And the biggest things that I want you to answer in the comment section below is, based on all these filters we've looked at, based off performances in the playoffs, head-to-head, with or without players, is this a parlay that you think has good value? And if so, let us know in the comment section below. And if not, I hope you guys can build your own parlays using the Parlay Optimizer to make parlays with good value. Thank you.